In this video I am going to show you how to make this Aran weight houndstooth beanie hat. The brim has a ribbing on it. It's designed to be worn turned over. The hat is worked by starting with the rib section and then you work from the bottom up and make decreases towards the crown. In the pattern I have allocated wrong sides and right sides, but you can really choose which side you prefer to be wrong and right. For the example I'm going to show you, I'm going to use this Drops Alaska yarn, which is quite a heavy, well it's not heavy, it's quite a thick worsted Aran weight yarn. So I've got Drops Alaska and Drops Nepal, which are slightly different, but roughly the same weight, so I'm happy to work with those. A good way to check whether two different yarns that are in the same weight class are going to work together, other than a visual inspection, you can see the strands are roughly the same thickness. But if you look at the suggested gauge on the label, I don't know if you can see that, okay, but you've got here 17 stitches and 22 rows. Now the numbers themselves don't matter, what matters is the numbers are the same, so you can see in this one it's also 17 stitches and 22 rows. That's just a good rule of thumb if you're not quite sure and you're mixing yarns. It helps that these are both the same yarn brands. For this original sample I used, this is the pink that we've used here, so I used Drops Nepal in two colours. For this hat I want it to be quite opaque, I want quite a dense fabric, so I'm going to stay on the smaller size crochet hook. I'm using a 5mm H hook for this. This is my Clover and More hooks, which is my go-to, and that will give you like a nice, you know, this is a cold weather hat so you want it to be nice and thick, but there's still enough movement in the fabric. So that's what I'm going for this, and the first thing we're going to do is get started with the ribbing. Now in this pattern I have used a yarn over slip stitch ribbing, which is worked in the back loop only, but really you could use any elastic ribbing that you prefer if the yarn over slip stitch is not for you. It's quite easy to substitute. The trick is just getting the right number of rows for the number of stitches you're going to be working. I do have a separate video which I'll link, which reviews 11 different types of crochet ribbing, so if that's something you're interested in exploring, go and have a look at that. For now I've started here with a chain of 11. I'm going to have 10 stitches, so I'm going to make 10 yarn over slip stitches. Now I appreciate this is quite dark yarn, so it might not be the easiest to see, but I'll try and make it as clear as I can. So we've got the first chain here, this is the back bump. We're going to be working in the back bumps on this first row. I'm going to skip that first stitch, I'm going to yarn over, insert into the second chain from hook, that's under the back bump, yarn over, and then I'm going to pull through the bump, and then I'm going to continue to pull through those two loops. So that's my first yarn over slip stitch. Same again, yarn over, insert into that back bump, yarn over, pull through the bump, and continue to pull through those two loops. Yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull through. I find it helpful just to hold the base of the stitch with my thumb, and make sure when you pull through you have a decent size loop left on your hook, otherwise your stitches can get really tight. So yarn over, insert your hook. Ooh, I've split my yarn there, insert the hook, yarn over, pull through, and continue to pull through. I keep my working yarn nice and relaxed. That's one of the key to any sort of slip stitch type stitches. So I'm going to carry on working to the end, so I have 10 yarn over slip stitches. Okay, so that's my first row of yarn over slip stitches. To work the second row, I'm going to chain one and I'm going to turn, and I'm going to work the next row in the back loops only. So that is my chain one, so I'm going to ignore that, and then my first stitch is going to be worked in the back loop of the last stitch from the previous row. So I'm going to yarn over and work through that back loop and then pull through all my loops. So yarn over, insert the hook into the back loop, yarn over, pull it through and pull it through. And then I'm going to complete that all the way across. So that's my 10 stitches. Now you might notice this first stitch, although I've changed one, this is the top here. So that's kind of a little bit squashed there. So the technique I use to help make it easier to find that stitch when you get to the other end, when I chain one first, and instead of turning with my yarn at the back, which I'd normally do for most stitches, and then start the next row that way, I actually turn against it, so I effectively wrap my yarn around that chain, and that just helps give me a little bit of separation so that my stitch has a little bit more height. You'll see what I mean in a moment. So I'm going to yarn over, again working in the back loops only. I'm going to work 10 yarn over slip stitches across. So that's 1, 2, so you can see as I come to that 10th, this is the back loop here, but it can be quite hard to see if you don't know what you're looking for. So let's work that last stitch, then I'm going to chain one, and again I'm going to turn into that working yarn. So instead I'd normally turn that way and then your yarn's staying at the back, but I'm going to turn against it. You don't have to do this, it's just something I find useful. So let's yarn over and get to the end. So as we come to the end, you can see that back loop is a little bit more visible. Whether you choose to chain and turn against your yarn or turn with it at the back, just try and be consistent, because then you'll get nice even ends. So that's the beginning of the band. I'm going to go away now and I'm going to work all rows. This is going to be an adult size hat. There are various sizes, so the number of rows you need to work will depend on the size you're making. This, I believe, is 72 rows, so you don't need to see me make all those. I'm going to go away, work those 72 rows. I'll come back and show you how I create a nice tidy join between the two ends. So when we've worked all the way across, we'll come and we will join this first chain row to the last row of the ribbing. So I'll come back in a moment and show you that. Okay, that last stitch, I'm just going to chain one, marks 71 rows. So the way I count rows, you can see each of these ribs is essentially 2 rows. So we start here, this is the right side. So that's 1 row, 2 row, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and so on. So this is 70 and this is 71. Now for this size, I want 72 rows altogether, but my 72nd row is going to be the joining row. And I have a technique that I use so that your ribbing is quite hard to spot it's quite hard to spot where the join is in your ribbing. So I'm going to show you that. Essentially, I've just turned, so this here is the wrong side, this is the wrong side. So that's the last row I have worked, and then here is my starting chain of 10. So what I'm going to do, I've made my one chain there. I'm going to slip stitch, and this slip stitch row is going to count as the 72nd row, so that will make an even number of rows in total. I'm going to slip stitch through the front loop of this starting chain. So this is the base of the starting chain where we worked into those back bumps. Front loop of that, and then the back loop of the equivalent stitch in that last row I just worked. So I'm just going to slip stitch through and then repeat that. So it's the front loop of the chain, the back loop of the last row. I'm keeping my yarn relatively relaxed. Then I'm gonna do this all the way across. That's 8, 9, and this is my 10th stitch, and I'm going to just chain one. So this, as mentioned, this is the wrong side, and actually once you can block that over, you've got quite a subtle join there, but on the right side you can see you've got these little extra lines there, but generally it's quite a discreet join. It's not totally invisible, but you'd have to look twice at it once your hat is on. So that is the completion of the brim. To start the hat, we want to think about wrong sides and right sides again. So this is the wrong side I've got of the brim. However, if you look in this one, the brim is going to be folded up, so the wrong side becomes the right side. If you're newer to wrong and right sides, I don't want you to get tangled up with this because it doesn't really matter hugely. It only matters if you are concerned about the pattern. So you can see this is the wrong side, this is the right side, we've got a different pattern. So if you're not worried about that, just kind of listen to this, don't worry if you don't follow it, because it is a little bit complicated. So in this hat pattern, the first row of stitches that I worked into the row end, the first row of the hat body, which I'm about to show you, was the right side, which meant all of these pink, these darker shades of pink were worked on the right side, all of the lighter shade of pink were worked on the wrong side. So for this hat that I'm making now, I'm going to reverse that so that I'm going to have the lighter shades, because for my second colour I'm going to use this same light pink. So I'm going to have the lighter shade as the right side. So I'm going to reverse it, which means my first row here, where I work into the row ends, which I'm about to do, that needs to be the wrong side. Now I'm on the wrong side here, but as I mentioned, I'm going to flip it. And the too long didn't read version of that is to work in the row ends. I'm just going to work on the right side of the brim, which will be the wrong side of the hat. Again, don't worry if that sounds like gibberish. What's important now is we're going to work into the row ends. So let's look at row ends. I genuinely believe working into row ends can be one of the trickiest parts about crochet. So I'm going to show you how I do it in this situation. With my join, I've got 72 rows. So I want to make 72 stitches, as if by magic, which is equivalent to 1 stitch for each row end. But the way I do this when working into ribbing is a little different. What I'm going to do, I'm going to work 2 stitches in alternate row ends. I find when you've got an elastic ribbing, this just helps with the structure. My general tip for working into row ends is always to work into the tighter section. So you can see this last bit of rib, that's quite tight, whereas this row end, so that's one row end here, and then you've got this row end here where you've got this much bigger, you can see the light through it, this much bigger hole. If I work 2 stitches into that hole's going to get bigger. So what I'm going to do instead, and I chained that one at the end of the last row, I'm going to work into this little V of the row ends here. And I'm going to work 2 single crochet in there. And then I'm going to skip that row end where I've already got quite a gap. I'm going to work 2 single crochet into that next V of the row end. So you can see I've not made great big holes. And I'm just going to work that all the way around the brim into 2 single crochet into that V of alternative row ends. That should leave me with 72 stitches. So I'm going to go away and do that. And then once we've done that, I'll show you how I join and turn, and we'll get stuck into the body of the hat. Okay, so I've worked my 72 stitches around. I haven't joined yet. One thing to mention here is just, you might want to do this before you do the join actually, but stop and check your measurements. You want to check that your matching gauge and the circumference of this brim matches the dimensions of the size you're looking to make. So refer back to the pattern, double check what brim length you should be working with. If you're making for you, you can at this point pop the brim on your head, check it's a comfortable fit, remembering the brim's going to be folded over. So that's another way to have a quick rule of thumb check. Okay, so I've got to the end of this row, and the way I join rows throughout the rest of the body of the hat is I will just slip stitch in, pull that slip stitch tight, I'll chain, and then when I turn I will work in the last stitch of the previous round. So I'm working in turned rounds. This is my chain, this is my slip stitch. I'm going to ignore those and work the first stitch into that stitch there. However, I'm also working with colours. So this is how I change my colours, remembering I'm on the wrong side. Now, if you're very careful, you can make lovely joins on both sides, so you have a reversible hat. But on the wrong side, I'm just gonna slip stitch as normal, and I'm gonna join my yarn just into that loop, and then I'm gonna turn, and I'm gonna chain and just pull that end through, and I'm just gonna pull that blue one tight. So we're going to start, as I mentioned, we're going to start in that last stitch of the previous round. If you struggle with this at all, pop a stitch marker in the last stitch of your round and the first stitch of your round if you find that helpful. So the houndstooth stitch pattern, which is what we're going to be making, and back on the right side, let's just turn that way. The houndstooth stitch pattern is basically alternating single crochet then double crochet. This is all US terms. So I work single double all the way around, join, turn, change colour. The changing of colour is what makes this stitch pattern. You then work the same stitch pattern in the other direction. So on this sample, you can see here in this pink, I work single double all the way around. When I'm coming back, I work my single crochet in the double crochet of the previous round and the double crochet in the single crochet, and just repeat single double, and that is what creates this kind of jagged houndstooth look. Don't worry if you got lost there, because I'm going to show you. So we're starting in that first stitch, which is here. I'm going to work a single crochet, double crochet in the next stitch, single crochet, double crochet in the next stitch, and I'm going to work this all the way round. I've got an even number of stitches, so you start on a single crochet and finish on a double crochet. If ever that changes, it means something's gone a little bit awry somewhere. So I'll come back in a moment when I finish this round. So I come to the end of that round, finishing on a double crochet, and then I want to join with a slip stitch to the top of that first single crochet. So what I'm going to do here, because this pink is on the right side, I'm just going to drop that pink yarn. So I've inserted my hook, dropped my pink yarn there, and I'm just going to complete that slip stitch with the blue yarn. Then I'm going to chain one and turn. So you can see here is my chain one, here is my turn, sorry, here is my chain one, here is my slip stitch, and then here is that double crochet from the last row. So I'm going to work a single crochet into that double crochet, and then a double crochet into that single crochet, and just repeat that all around. So single crochet, double crochet, single crochet, double crochet. So there's my double crochet into the last stitch, which was the first single crochet of the previous round. So I've got my wrong side in front of me here. The blue rows or blue rounds are wrong side rounds. So a little sneaky way to make a slightly neater join, again this is optional, you can just slip stitch as normal. What I like to do, I've dropped my hook out of that loop, I'm just going to pull that working yarn towards me, and then I'm going to put my hook under that stitch, which is the first stitch of the round, so that's what we're going to be slip stitching in. Pop that blue loop on, just tighten it up, and then pull that through, because that means we've just got the working yarn on the wrong side, so you get a slightly neater join. Then I'm going to pick up that pink, chain one and turn, and I'm back ready to work on the right side. So you can see here, this is that last double crochet. You can see the difference in heights of the stitches. So I'm going to work a single crochet in there and a double crochet in the single crochet. As you start to work this stitch pattern, you'll start to see which stitch belongs where. So if you lose count or drop your attention for a while, you can see that the double crochet is a bit higher, there's a slight dip where the single crochet is. The more rounds you work, the more you'll just be able to eyeball it. But you can see there is quite a significant height difference. So essentially, that is your houndstooth pattern. You just keep working these alternating rounds. Works the same way if you're working a flat piece in just rows. Just alternate colour each row or round, working single crochet and double crochet in single crochet. Okay, and there is the last double crochet of that third pattern round. Here we have the single crochet that I'm going to slip stitch into. I'm going to slip stitch as normal, and I'm just going to drop the pink there, pick up my blue, again we're on the right side, and complete the slip stitch in the blue yarn. Can then chain and turn to begin the next round. So here you have my blue chain, then my pink slip stitch, and then this is that last double crochet. So I'm going to start my round there, working a single crochet, then double. And that is the basic houndstooth pattern. You just repeat the rounds, changing colour each row. I use the term row and round interchangeably here. For the hat, I'm just going to go ahead and keep repeating these rounds until it's time to start decreasing for the crown. The number of rounds I need to work before the decrease will depend on the size, so I refer you to the pattern for that, depending on which size you're working. You can change the height of the hat by adding rounds. I would always add them in pairs just so the decrease section doesn't get over complex. The hat's designed to be a relatively cosy fit. It's not got any slouch in it, so if you like a little bit more height in your hat, then do add rows. I wouldn't suggest removing them unless you like a particularly short beanie, or you don't want to fold the ribbing over. In fact, what I'll do, I will add a couple of rounds in this sample so you can see how it differs from the original sample. Okay, I'm going to crack on and I'll come back to you when we're ready for the crown. Okay, so I have finished working the houndstooth pattern in the body of the hat. You may think this seems quite long, but just remember when you're working it, we're going to fold this brim up when we're done, so it will be shorter than it intuitively looks. You also may notice that the tension on this hat body is wider than the brim. That's okay because this brim has quite a lot of stretch, so that'll actually help make it cozier. So now we're going to move on to decreasing for the crown. So we're going to decrease the hat so we've got a nice round crown like so. I've finished that last row of the hat body and I've changed to my pink yarn, which is yarn B. And now I'm going to start making my decreases on this round. Now, because this stitch pattern works in, it has a multiple of 2, it works in pairs, so you've got your single crochet and your double crochet. When you're decreasing, you need to take that into account, because if I just did a normal single crochet 2 together decrease or double crochet 2 together decrease, then you're gonna get thrown off from your alternating stitch pattern. So the way I approach that is I will do 2 decrease together. I'll do a single crochet 2 together over this first pair, and then I'll do a double crochet 2 together over this second pair. And that means I'll be ready to carry on working in pattern, working my single crochet and then my double crochet. The following round, which will be back into yarn A, so my pink is yarn B, my blue is yarn A, I will just work in the normal houndstooth pattern. So you will decrease alternate rounds. Because I'm doubling up on decreases this round, I will do a round without decreasing, and that will counter that. So let's get started. So I'm going to work I've chained one already. I'm going to work my single crochet 2 together over that double crochet and that single crochet. I'm going to yarn over and pull through 3. Then I'm going to work a double crochet 2 together over that double and that single. So essentially I'm still working my pattern, I'm just doing it as a decrease. So double crochet 2 together. These decrease stitches are described in the pattern if you're not familiar with them. So that's my 2 decreases. So then I'm going to work in pattern, so my single double, for 4 pairs, so that's 8 stitches. That's for the size I'm working. Depending on the size you're working, you may work a different number of pairs. So I'm going to go from 72 stitches in these rounds, and I'm going to end up with 60 stitches. So I'm going to decrease 12 stitches over the round. Here I've decreased 2 stitches. So I'm going to work single, double, that's 1 pair, single, double, that's 2 pairs, single, double, oops, caught that on my nail, that's 3 pairs, and then single and double for my 4 pairs. So we've got 1 decrease, 2 decreases, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8 stitches between. Then I'm just going to repeat that all around. So I'm going to do a single crochet 2 together, double crochet 2 together, and then I'm going to work in pattern for 8 stitches, that's 4 pairs. You can see I'm still on the pattern, so I'm still working my doubles in that shorter stitch and my singles in that longer stitch. So that is 8. I'll show you one more of the decreases. Single, no, that's not what I'm doing. I'm doing a single 2 together. So insert yarn, pull up a loop, insert into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3, then a double 2 together, so yarn over, insert, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, let's get some more yarn over, insert into the next stitch and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 3. So I'm then going to carry on working in pattern. Okay, so I finished that first decrease round and I've changed back to Yarn A, my blue, and you can see there's one of the decreases on the corner. It's quite subtle, but you can see, you should be able to see in your version how this is start to pull in. So next I'm just going to work in my houndstooth pattern, so single double, single double, single double, except I need to turn and go the other way. I'm just going to work in that houndstooth pattern all the way around, and then we'll come back and we're going to do the next decrease round. So I finished that round of houndstooth pattern, and you can actually see that shows a bit more clearly where we've got that start of a curve. So I'm going to work the next decrease round. Now you remember in this decrease round, all the decrease rounds are worked on the right side, so that's facing. I started with my single crochet 2 together and then my double crochet 2 together, and then I worked in pattern, and you can see where the decreases are. On this next round I'm going to flip the order, so I'm going to work in pattern and then work my decrease. The reason I'm doing that is so that all the decreases don't stack up on top of each other. It's very easy to do when working in this sort of consistent decrease or increase pattern, and it can cause sort of angular shapes, so I like to stagger them. So last time I did my single crochet 2 together, my double crochet 2 together, and then 4 pairs of the pattern, so 8 stitches between. This round I've now only got 60 stitches. I counted and checked we were all right there. I'm going to work 3 pairs and then the decrease, so that's 6 stitches and then my decrease. So it's a single crochet, double, single, oops, So that is my 6 stitches worked in pattern. Then I'm going to work that decrease. So you can see I've got a decrease here and a decrease here. So this one is going to be not quite in the middle, but near enough. So let's work my single crochet 2 together for the decrease, and then double crochet 2 together for the second decrease, and then work in pattern again for 6 stitches and then decrease. So this is going to be my repeat round. Work in pattern for 6 stitches or 3 pairs, single crochet decrease, double crochet decrease, and repeat. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then decrease, single, 2 together, and then double 2 together. Oops. So I will continue working this pattern all around, and then I will work another row in the yarn A in the blue, and that will again just be working in the stitch pattern, and I'll come back and I'll show you how you can see the shaping really start to appear. And here we have our second set of 2 decrease rows completed, so you can really see now how it's pulling in. For the next set I'm going to go back to starting the round with the decrease and then working in pattern. So we're now at 48 stitches, so we've decreased by another 12, and we're going to we worked 3 pairs or 6 stitches between the decreases last time, so this time we're going to work 2 pairs or 4 stitches. Again, we're going to start with the decrease this time so we don't have them stacked. You can see here at the end of the last decrease round here, that is where the decreases were, and you can see that there was where the original set of decreases were. So we're going to start, I've chained 1 with a single crochet 2 together, and then a double 2 together, and then we're going to work in pattern for 4 stitches. 1, 2, and then work another set of decreases, so single 2 together, double 2 together. This last bit gets quicker and quicker and quicker. It's really quite satisfying. So once again I'm going to go off and work the rest of this round and the following round, which will just be in the houndstooth pattern, and you'll see how close we're getting to the crown closure. So now we have our third set of decreases complete. We're going to move on to round 7, and in this round we're back to starting with the pattern followed by the decrease. The last round we only made 4 stitches between the decrease, so this round we're going to reduce that to 2, so that's 1 pair, 2 stitches. So we're going to start in pattern with the single crochet and then the double crochet, and then we're going to make my decrease, single 2 together, double 2 together, and we're going to repeat that all the way around. That's 6 times, so we have 6 repeats on this. So we started with 36 stitches. We're going to end this round with only 24. It's still really key to make sure you're on pattern, so you're working your singles in those taller stitches and your doubles in the shorter ones. And here is my last decrease. And let's join. And we're going to work again in pattern in yarn A, in that blue yarn, all around. It starts to get a little bit tight around here. So now here we are ready for the last set of decrease rounds. So last round we did the decrease pair and then just 2 pattern stitches between. This round we're just going to work decreases all of the way around. So I've got 24 stitches here and we're going to reduce that to 12. So I'm going to work my single 2 together and my double 2 together, and I'm just going to repeat that all of the way around. Here is my last set of decreases. It's my last double. It does get a bit fiddly at this point, but we've got one more round to go. So you can see there, I've just got a relatively small hole left just there. So I'm going to slip stitch and change my yarn. And actually we're done with this yarn bee now. So I'm going to fasten that off. I'm going to leave a decent length tail just for sewing in. So for the final round, I'm just going to pull that tight and I'm going to pop that inside the hat. This is a good time to show you the difference in pattern. So you know we talked about that at first, the wrong and right side, so that you can see that's how the houndstooth looks on that side, and this is how we have it on this side. So we're just going to work for this last row, we're just going to work in pattern the whole way around. So our single doubles, our decreases are all done. We should have 12 stitches, so that's 4, so here is my last stitch, and I'm just going to slip stitch to the top of that first single crochet just there, pull that out. I'm going to fasten off, leaving a reasonable length tail, and then I'm going to pull this tail through. I'm just going to turn this out so we're on the wrong side. And the last thing we're going to do is just sew this top closed. So I've got a yarn needle here which I'm going to thread on to my tail. And then to sew it closed, I'm going to carry on in this direction. I'm just going to weave it in and out of each of the stitches. So I'm actually going to ignore that stitch I've slip stitched into, and I'm going to pull it out that way on the first. You can leave it relatively relaxed at this stage, but when we get all the way round, we're going to pull it tight and it's going to close the crown of the hat like a little drawstring. Okay, so then I'm just gonna pull that loop close, and voila, as if by magic, that closes the crown, and then I'm just gonna pop a few stitches in to secure that closure. Then I'll just leave that for now. And then, obviously we've got some ends to sew in, but there we have, you see that nice neat crown. You can pop a pom-pom on if you are excited by such things, and we can fold that over. And there we have our finished houndstooth beanie. You can see I added a couple of rows compared to the pink one, so it's the same width roughly. My gauge is a little bit looser on this, it's always looser when I film, but you can see the difference in height there as well. Any questions, do pop them in the comments. I've got other houndstooth patterns if you really enjoyed working this stitch pattern. I find it really therapeutic to work. And go forth and have a cosy head. Don't forget to subscribe for more tutorials and visit the website doradoes.co.uk for all sorts of crochet goodness.